Chapter 2, Confrontation.
Florida and I became friends after that. I admired him and respected his kindness. My brothers, some of the Injuns, and I sometimes made fun of Florida and Yonah for being old. We would say how outdated and senile Florida was, and that he probably made up most of his stories. We didn't hold back from insulting his looks either. He had one big driving wheel under his cab and steep inclined cylinders. Yonah was fair game for also having been built as a six-wheeler like Florida, then having been converted into an eight-wheeler like us. Yonah was also smaller than the other 440s. I would usually feel bad after the others would tease Yonah. He was also gentle and kind. He didn't seem to deserve it, not like Florida, who was always gruff and would reply in kind. After the incident with the horse, I couldn't bring myself to join in teasing either one of them. I was speaking with Yonah in the roundhouse one evening. Senator and Chieftain were making fun of Florida. "Hey, leave him alone," I protested. "Since when did you become so sensitive?" Governor snapped. "General is a horse whisperer now," Senator replied. "Yeah, he stays in the stable with those other two," Chieftain sneered, meaning Florida and Yonah. "What a grand railroad this is! We have an ancient relic, a converted eight-wheeler freak, and a horse lover. Wouldn't Rogers, Ketchum, and Grosvenor be proud?" Governor growled. "There is no need to be so nasty. That experience with the horse was painful for General. Leave him alone," Yonah defended. "Stay out of this, Tiny," Senator barked. "Yeah, if we want to hear about the Jabberwocky, we'll ask Mr. Brown, the librarian," Chieftain said. "Why, my day, we would never speak with such disrespect," Florida said. Then President started in. "Why don't you go build a railroad somewhere, old iron?" My boiler became hot and my safety valve burst. I let off a huge burst of steam and blew my whistle long and hard. "That's enough of you!" I exclaimed. "You're right. I am a horse lover. I'm a disgrace to Rogers. I'd rather be with an old Baldwin relic and a Norris freak than you." I steamed away angrily and slept in the car shed that night. My brothers and I stopped talking.
A soul won't roll on a torn up track. All through eternity you'll roll me alone. 'Cause when you leave this way you can never come home.
When I woke the next morning, men were loading and unloading freight to and from wagons and carts. There were a line of horses tied to the rail at the end of the yard. I sat and watched the people mosey about and conduct their business. I listened to the hustle and bustle and soon found myself humming. My attention next wandered to the horses. I looked at them. There were 8. 2 were brown, 3 were black, 1 was white, and the other 2 were gray. I wondered what they were thinking. What were their lives like? I thought of the poor horse with the wagon of cotton bales. Suddenly a voice snapped me back to reality. "What the devil are you staring at, steam train?" I turned to see who was speaking. I didn't see any of the workmen or the porters talking to me. The firelighter had already left and my crew weren't there yet. I looked forward and noticed one of the horses staring at me. "Well, give me an answer then," the voice spoke. I jumped back. Did the horse just speak? It looked like it, but horses don't talk. "Leave the poor beggar be, Wildfire," another voice spoke. "Oh, blimey, them contraptions come along bragging about how fast and modern they are, taking work away from us and giving our owners these ideas of doing away with horses. And you say, leave the poor beggar be? How'd you feel if it was your brother getting a shotgun slug to the mane, mate?" A third voice growled. This time I could definitely tell it was the horse. Ever since they came, my owner can get his cotton to the north faster than ever. I've had to make an extra trip each day here to keep up with the demand. Surely Master O'Hare would have plenty of work for your brother, the second horse argued. Aye, me cousin's cousin works at the rolling mill. She says they have more work there than ever thanks to the railway, a fourth horse added. This was one of the grey horses. She sounded like an older mare. Bully on her. We can't all be that lucky, you know, the third horse scoffed. What's with the Barney? A large, brown, chestnut horse spoke as it was led to the hitching rail. Hey up, Goliath. Help us settle this, mate. Do you think the railways are a threat to us or not? The first horse, Wildfire, asked. Men and me china plates ended up brown bread 'cause of 'em. They be the way of the future, though, lads, Goliath said with a pained look, and turned his gaze to the ground before noticing me. Why don't we just ask the train himself? The old grey mare suggested. They all turned their gaze to me. Are you here to take our place and cause our demise? Wildfire asked me straightly. We were there to take their place, to replace them. I didn't know how to answer and just stuttered, Come on then, out with it, Wildfire demanded. I sighed and looked at the rails. I turned my gaze back and looked at them. I'm sorry, but we are, I said. Bloody Nora! He admits it! The third one exclaimed and jumped on his hindquarters. Don't be rash, Brownie. The second horse tried to calm the group. I'm sorry. I don't mean to take your job. I don't want anything bad to happen to you.
I will let you down.
I didn't know.
I will make you hurt.
I was just doing my job, I cried in defense. Hey, leave the poor lad alone, the old mare scolded.
I could start again, a million miles away. I would keep myself. I would find a way.
A young woman in a slightly dirty and worn dress came to the horses, followed by a couple of men. She walked up to Brownie, the third horse, grabbed hold of his lead, and began talking to him. He stopped stomping, and she walked forward and began caressing his neck and nose bridge. Shh, easy boy, it's all right. She turned to look at the second horse. What's the matter, pretty boy? She said, and walked over and began caressing his neck and ears. He whinnied softly and motioned his nose towards me. She followed his gaze and stared at me. At that moment, my crew came to start our day's work. She turned back to Pretty Boy and caressed him gently. It's okay, Pretty Boy. That steam engine isn't going to hurt you. You're not going to be replaced by it either. I could never let anything happen to my Pretty Boy. You're family. She patted him on the flank and rubbed Brownie on the neck before she walked away. Tony climbed into the cab and began feeding the fire. Jeff sat at the controls and released the brake. Well, General, looks like you've made quite a commotion with the horses, Tony said as he stood up and stretched his back while leaning on the axe. Shut up, Tony. You know that accident was my fault, too. It made me sick seeing all that. I couldn't eat for 2 days, Jeff said. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. I wasn't thinking, Tony apologized. We backed over to the roundhouse to turn around and fill up on water and wood. We collected a freight train, and after we were cleared, set off for Kingston. As we were underway, I asked my crew, what's going to happen to all the horses when we replace them? There won't be any use for them. They'll be replaced with machines and put out to pasture, Jeff explained. Horses just can't meet the demand, so it's best they stick to pulling plows and wagons, Tony added. Jeff didn't hold back. The lucky ones. The rest will probably end up as tins of horse meat. But those poor creatures, they didn't do anything wrong, and they're just gonna toss them away without any regard at all for the work they've done? That's the way of the modern industrial world. Look at them poor children up there in the north working in them textile mills. They lose an arm in that loom? Tough. They just have to keep working or they'll be replaced by the line of children waiting outside for a job. Jeff replied sternly. My God, that's terrible, I protested. Or the poor lads who work in the ore mines. If a shaft collapses, the priority is to get the mules out. Mules cost more, and if a man dies, they just hire another, Tony added. I'm afraid that's the way it is. I'm just glad I was able to join the railroad and quit working the mines, Jeff said. We were silent for a while until the station master waved us into a siding at Marietta so a passenger train and a southbound freight could pass.
Thou wilt come no more, gentle Annie, like a flower thy spirit did depart. Thou art gone, alas, like the many that have bloomed in the summer of my heart. Shall we never more behold thee, never hear thy winning voice again? When the springtime comes, gentle Annie, when the wildflowers are scattered o'er